And a special shout out to first-time campers. First time at a camp. So we have over here Alita and Medi. First time ever going to a camp of any kind. All right, yeah, okay. And Louie. And according to Alita, even if they have a vacation, it's like to go visit family but to just have a week of this. All right, so you're gonna love it. Then you're not even gonna want to go home. So, and where's Omar? Oh, did he have to go back already? No, he's here. Oh, he's here. He's one. It's his first camp. It's his first camp as well. So I wanted to acknowledge Omar, first time being in a camp of any kind. Brother Bickish and his lovely wife made it all the way from Idaho into the lovely free state of Washington. Kind of, maybe not really. Praise the Lord. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter number 6. And so I wanted to start off talking about, and of course this is an extremely familiar verse about teaching our children. I'll say something about the concept. But what I want us to be able to focus on during this week is really contemplating our families and our home, and to spend some time thinking about what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. What, why, and how. And something interesting about the how I want to make mention of this morning. Does anybody in here, has anybody recognized how exceedingly busy life is? Isn't it just amazing? This week is beautiful up here because you're isolated with no cell service. No cell service. And I already know some of you, you've already walked every square inch of the property to find that spot where a signal will come in. Look, enjoy it. Enjoy being disconnected. I think a lot of us want to disconnect, but we can't. We're just too used to it. I found myself several times, we were talking about something, and my habit is, I have information at my fingertip all the time, so I say something, and then I can just, oh. So this is what it was like when we couldn't look anything up. We had to keep conversations carrying on. So just enjoy being disconnected, and also enjoy during this week the fact that we're all together. We're all together. And we get to spend time together for a long period of time, for a week where we're not going to work. I know there's several people that couldn't get the week off. They're working. They're going to come in nights and go back. But just being able to spend time together, having really, really, really good fellowship and conversations. And I would encourage you to make use of that the conversations that we're having, with each other are meaningful conversations, spiritual content. I'm not saying you can't laugh and joke and have a good time, obviously, but young people, when you guys are sitting around, you don't have to talk about the last movie that you saw and that character. This is an opportunity to open your heart, to share, to talk, and you've got multiple people, and maybe people that you don't have that, or maybe you're just not close to them or haven't got a chance to really get to know them. Spread out a little bit and increase the spectrum of your fellowship and just enjoy it. I pray that it's going to be a great week, and we're going to hear from many people speaking this week. Give us a chance to hear many people pour out their heart and share it, and hoping that it'll be a great benefit to our families. When you think about a family, you think about children, it is the one thing that you can produce that's eternal. Like the souls of our children will never cease to be either heaven or hell, but our children are eternal. And in all likelihood, our children will have children, and their children will have children. And several generations from now, there will be hundreds or maybe even thousands of people living on this earth as a direct result of your offspring. Like we're producing something that's eternal and some ones that have got generational impact on the world. What we're doing is serious business, important business. And God has taken the most precious thing, which are the souls of human beings, and given us the privilege and the honor and the responsibility of shaping them, of mentoring them. Make no mistake, it is the will of God that you shape your children. You will not make, there is personality, there's gifting, and there are talents that you're not going to make. God makes those in your children. God makes those. And that's why you can't compare one child to the next child. God made them, but you are definitely going to shape those children. God will do the actual shaping through you. Like you don't step back and say, hey, God will do it. No, you do it. You're responsible for it. And what happens in the busyness of life, we are so busy doing the necessary parts of life, which are like going to work and earning and paying and fixing and repairing and laundry and meals and earning a paycheck and fixing this and buying, that when you actually squeeze down the amount of time that we as parents spend intentionally shaping the children, it ends up not being that much time. And in fact, a lot of the parenting that we end up doing with our children is not intentional, it's actually reactionary. So when our children have done something wrong or something that needs to be corrected, we react to it and then we teach. And by the way, you should. Like you're supposed to be there when things happen in their life, and you do react to it with more teaching and training, but there's a whole lot of what we do that's proactive, that's intentional, that it's not waiting for something to happen to bring up a teaching moment. So I want you to look at Deuteronomy chapter number 6. Here, verse 4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, with all thy soul, with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. Just notice the progression here. First and foremost, in your own heart as a dad and a mom, must be a personal love for God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Your love of God with everything you are and everything you have is going to be one of the most powerful lessons that your children learn. Observing, it's evident, it's obvious. What my parents have is a devotional love for God. And these words, which I command thee this day, shall be in thine heart. So God wants the teachings that He gives to be in you, in your heart, part of you. You understand when something becomes part of you, like when you learn how to drive, and that will put your parenting to a new level. When you get in the passenger seat of a child in the driver's seat, the first time they pull out into traffic, like the Wenatchee or like Mission going one way north and they're in the middle and you want them to do a lane change in traffic, and you're praying for your life while it's happening. Can't remember why I was saying that. What was I saying before I said that? See, I had flashbacks when I mentioned that of moments, and I lost my, oh, I know what I'm saying now. Okay, thank you, got it back. So you're telling your kids, do a head check, a mirror check every 15 or 20 seconds. Check that. When's the last time you checked the mirror? Okay, you need to know what's around you. All right? But eventually, what starts out as information and rules to follow, eventually it just becomes part of you. And most of us adults who are driving, we don't have a timer counting down every 15 seconds, check the mirror. Like we've learned, we understand. We want to know what's around us and what's behind us at all times. So now it's automatic. We're not thinking, it becomes part of you. So the Word of God comes until it's part of you. And then verse number 7. Thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. I'm going to come back to that word diligently in just a minute. And shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, when thou walkest by the way, when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And I've mentioned this before. The concept here is that a parent is interacting with their children at every part of their children's day. When you rise up, when you sit down, when you walk by the way, when thou risest up, the idea is that you are with your children all throughout that day. I understand when, look, you're obviously you're working, you're doing different things, but the idea is you're not giving the raising of your children to anybody else. You're not passing that on to anybody else. There will be more voices in your children's head than you. There will be other people to influence and mentor your children along with you. You're not all that your children need, but you are the primary. Like you are the primary responsibility in what your children become. You are the strongest voice. Outside of God, you are the strongest voice, and you will be the loudest voice until they learn to walk with God. The loudest voice, the most important shaper of your children, it is you, and so you're with them all the time. So this idea of training your children, mentoring your children, bringing them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord, it's on. Like when they wake up, it's on. And until they lay their head on their pillow, it's on. And if you do this the way God intended it to do, it is exhausting. It is exhausting. Parenting, biblically, should wear you out. And you should be going to God for energy, for strength, and for wisdom to get up and do it again the next day. Because if you've not already learned about parenting, there is an extreme amount of repetition. And it's interesting, the repetition. The need for repetition is actually found in this verse here. God's saying this is going to keep going every day. You're going to keep working on this. From the time you rise up until the time you go to bed, you're going to be in the life of your children teaching. You're going to be talking to them over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. You are in their life. If you're not, you will become aware of it, because when things are beginning to happen in your children's heart and their mind, and especially as they get older, and you start thinking, where did you come up with that? How did that get into your mind? I didn't know that was in you. Why is that even there? And that's because somewhere along the line within this process, the communication between you and your children, the diligent communication, when you rise up, when you walk, when you sit down, when you go, it stopped somewhere along the line. And believe me, there's a difference between telling your kids what to do and having really good, authentic communication with them. Because you can get up and say, wash your hands before you sit down at the table. Go make your bed. Clean up your room. start your schoolwork. Like you can be commanding your children, and your children can be doing what you tell them to do, but that's not what's going on here. The talking that's going on here in Deuteronomy is related to the diligently, teaching diligently. It's related to that very word there about what you're doing when you're communicating with them. Now, the word diligently is, there are several Hebrew words that are translated diligently. The Hebrew word that we're going to find in our text is only translated diligently this one time. Every other time it's translated something else, I'll tell you. The Hebrew words that are translated diligently paint a beautiful picture about what that means. In Exodus 15:26, it means to hear intelligently. The idea is attentiveness. So the Bible requires you to listen diligently. And when the Bible says to listen diligently, it means you are hearing intelligently. It means you're inclining, you're bending, you're attentive. You're not letting any of the words slip. That's not the word diligent here in Deuteronomy, because the word for diligently in Deuteronomy is not about what you hear. It's going to be about what you say. In Leviticus 10 and verse number 16, the word translated diligently there means to tread or to frequent, usually to follow in pursuit, to search thoroughly. And it's still diligently. Have you ever told a 7-year-old son to go into another room and get something? It's on the third shelf on the right-hand side. Correct. And he comes back, and what does he say? It's not there. I can't find it. Right? Because he did not search diligently. He did not do a thorough search. And when you tell them it's there, and they go search a second time, and they come back crying that it's not there, I looked, Mom. And then finally, Mom's going to walk by the hand and go exactly where you said it was, and it's right there. And they'll go, oh, I didn't see it. Because they did not search thoroughly. So the word diligent there is the idea of searching thoroughly. In Deuteronomy 4:9, it's a different Hebrew word that's translated diligently, and it means vehemently, wholly, with energy. The idea is not with laziness. The idea is with energy and with strength. Deuteronomy 6:17, the word diligently there means to hedge about as with thorns, to guard, to protect, to attend to. It says to keep the commandments diligently. The idea there is that you see it as something worth protecting, something worth hedging up and not escaping. So you're protecting it with diligence and care. And there's a few other words. However, the word diligently here in Deuteronomy 6:7 is only translated diligent once. Here's how it's translated every other time. 4 times it is translated as the word sharp or sharpened. Psalm 45:5, thine arrows are sharp in the heart. Psalm 124, sharp arrows of the mighty. Psalm 140 verse 3, they have sharpened their tongues. Proverbs 25:18, and a sharp sword. Isaiah 5:28, whose arrows are sharp. One time it is translated pricked. Psalm 73:21, and I was pricked in my reins. And 2 times it is translated whet, W-H-E-T, as in to sharpen a sword. Deuteronomy 32:41, if I whet my glittering sword. Psalm 64:3, who whet their tongues. Except in Deuteronomy 6 and verse 7, it says, thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. diligently. So if you were to take a moment, I've never sharpened a sword. I've sharpened cane knives and attempted to sharpen knives. I haven't quite got the skill to it. Does anybody in here sharpen knives, swords, anything like that? Do you just go grab some sandpaper or go grab a file and just start hacking away at it? Or is there a process to it? There's a careful process to it that you do. And so the idea is you're taking something that's dull and you are sharpening it. You're sharpening it. You're making it sharp enough that it can slice, and sharp enough that it can prick, sharp enough that it can cut. I do know that working with a dull axe, working with a dull sword, working with a dull knife, something that is not sharpened very well is not very effective when it comes time to get that job done. A child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame, the Bible says. Children don't sharpen themselves. There is a process that parents do with their children. And it is a constant process. It is happening all day long. The sharpening that we are doing with our children, how we are whetting the sword, we are making it sharp, it's happening all day long. When they rise up in the morning, you're going to be using something to sharpen them, by the way. God said, these words which I command thee shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. Thou shalt sharpen the arrow or the sword. Children are called an arrow, correct? As arrows are in the hands of a mighty man. So the sharpening begins. Now, parents, how do you normally feel in the morning when you first wake up? Okay, you wake up in the morning. You're probably exhausted from work, life, and parenting the night before, and you wake up in the morning, and then your children start waking up. And if you have a couple of them, when do they start requiring the attention of parents? Like immediately. Like it begins immediately. At what part of the day do they need to begin being sharpened by their parents? Immediately. So give me an example of children wake up first thing in the morning and the need of parental sharpening with God's word begins. Give me an example of what begins, right when it begins. The dawn.
Give me food.
Huh?
Give me food.
Give me food. All right. And when do they want food?
Now.
They want food now. And they want mom and dad to snap to it. Okay? And then when mom and dad say to them, breakfast is at 7:30. And it's now 6:55. And they've now got 35 minutes to wait for breakfast. What is the normal spirit of a child who's hungry when you say breakfast is at 7:30? Can I have a snack? I want it now. Can't wait. And when you tell them that they need to wait for it, does something happen to their attitude and spirit? Yeah, right away. And so what does mom and dad do? You start talking, by the way. You start communicating with them right away. Breakfast is at 7:30, and we'll all sit down to the table together and eat. You can make it. You'll survive. You won't die. Barring a medical condition, right? The exception is always a medical condition. If you've got a medical condition that requires something different, obviously, you're not going to put your kid into the hospital because you couldn't eat breakfast until 7:30. But the idea is right from the time they're very little, they're very demanding. Like they would like the world to revolve around their appetites. They would like the world to revolve around their this, and that. But what you do as a parent is you're shaping them already, because you're teaching them, the world doesn't revolve around you. It's very important. We live in a pandering generation where it's the kids who are sharpening the parents to what they hope their expectations will be. A generation ago, if you ever looked at the Chinese culture between children and elders was like respect. You should see it now. You think our culture's changed? When we were in Fiji, we had a number of Chinese families that immigrated into Fiji for work and jobs and other things, and their children were absolute animals. And these parents are at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. And so this generation has done, because they now have money, is like, let's just buy them more stuff. And so you see these young Chinese kids, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they've got iPads, they've got this, they've got videos, they've got toys, they've got this, they've got that, and they are mean and disrespectful, and the parents don't know what to do. Believe it or not, one of the main tools of evangelism to the Chinese people when we were in Fiji, the Chinese immigrants, is one of the Chinese would say, in our church, would say to them, our pastor has 9 children. And they would go, no. It's impossible. I mean, literally, they'd say it. And I would get a call from Sister Ai Ying or one of the other Chinese, and they would say, Pastor, we're witnessing to a new family. They've just moved to Fiji, and they want to know if they can come sit down and watch your family. They literally could not believe that you could have that many children in your home. And so we would have Chinese people that would come, and they would just come to our house and they would just look. And they would watch us say to our children, come here, please. And the kid would come, and they're like, how did you get them to do that? Like they were shocked with it. And that's with kids that, weren't robotic or anything like that nature. And you can't raise your kids by pandering to them. You trained your children. You bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord, and you sharpen them. And how long is the process of doing that? I don't know. How long does it take to make a sword? Faster than making kids. Banging it out, put it in the metal, doing this and that. How long? You're a sword maker? You do swords? Pins and sword? Like 3 days. You're not raising your kids in 3 days. Not raising them. But there's a process to it, a sharpening to it. So your kids, from the time they're little, you begin the sharpening. And you don't need to be mad at this, parents. Like parents, you should not be mad and frustrated at this process. You should know this before you have children, that it is a long process. It's a very long process. It is going to be one of the most important works that you do inside that home with your children. And it's going to take time. And there's going to be repetition. And there's going to be time. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to sharpen that sword. You're going to sharpen it a little bit more. It's going to happen throughout the day. There's going to be multiple opportunities for sharpening to take place. Your kids are going to be rude to each other. Do any parents in here have an issue with your children being rude to each other? Okay. You and you. Okay, these two with one kid each are like, nope, we have no problem at all with them being rude to each other. Hey. For the others in here. Yeah? What were you saying? Oh, with Louis? Was it, you raised your hand.
Yeah, my kids are rude to each other.
Yes. Yeah. All, yeah. Yeah. All of them. If you have children that were never rude to each other, where did you come from? Right? And you don't have bad kids because they're rude to each other. You have normal kids. Like that's normal. That's not because your kids are bad. It's because all children require sharpening, all of them. Right? Because they don't know God, and they don't know His Word, and what's bound in their heart is foolishness, according to the Scriptures. And when you get serious about this job, you will realize, man, this is actually bound in my child's heart, because we've already talked about this. Like, we've already dealt with this issue. We sat down. We had a conversation. I taught you. I explained it to you. We've been through this 12 times. You know what you do, though? You're sharpening. And you're sharpening again. And you're sharpening again. And you're going to the other side. You're going to the other side. You're sharpening. We want sharp kids. They don't sharpen themselves. That's what we do with them. We do it all day long. The scary thing in this process is that it can become weary. It can become really weary. So just for survey, any mom, dad, in the process of doing this, have you ever just felt, I'm exhausted, and maybe felt like I just can't do this? Anybody? Okay. Thank you. Sorry?
And I only have one.
Correct. It's not based on how many you have. It's not that people who have a lot of kids somehow have a deeper problem than those who have one. I don't mean a problem like they're a human soul. Like every child is a human soul. Have you already found out, parents, that you cannot do this the way God intends it to do without some things happening in you first? Like that first verse about mom and dad loving the Lord with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. The words of God being in your heart and then diligently. But something that happens with parenting I've talked to a number of stay-at-home parents in here where mom's like, there's time for nothing. There's no time for me to love God. There's no time for me in the Word of God, because like from the moment I wake up, they begin. It's like, Jojo, go back to sleep. I got up early enough to have some quiet time for me. What are you doing awake already? You know? Sharpening is what we do. But if we're not careful, instead of sharpening, right? Instead of sharpening, it could be that what we're applying to the sword is making it dull instead of making it sharp. When I first started trying to sharpen a cane knife, I watched the Fijians do it. They had the file, and their knife is getting so sharp it slices through anything. So I sat down with a file, and I started sharpening, and no matter what I did to that, I'm like, this is worse than a butter knife now. It's not getting sharp. And so they would say, no, the angle is wrong. You have to hold it at this angle, and you have to go to that side, and then you have to do it that way, and your hand's not right. Put it that way, and I'd try it, and I'm like, it's still dull. This is embarrassing. I should be able to get this down. But there is technique to it. Through many years of talking to frustrated parents and damaged young people. Frustrated parents and damaged young people. A lot of frustrated parents are struggling to find out why, no matter what I do, it's not working with my children. And there are children that are extremely damaged by well-intentioned parents. Because I am convinced, outside of maybe a few really bad people, I am convinced that parents, even lost parents, even drug addict parents. Like, I am convinced that most people who have children want to be a good dad and mom. I don't think parents get up and say, how can I do a really bad job of this? I don't think that's what's in the heart of any parent. I think they want to do right. And yet we cannot avoid the fact that many parents, the influence that they had on their children in the years that their children were with them was not a sharpening experience for them. In fact, rather than sharpening them, it dented them, it damaged them, it dulled them, and it hurt them. And that's not what we want to do as parents. We do not want to do that. So one of the things that for myself, when I think through this process, I cannot allow myself to be offended by the need for sharpening in my children. The fact that your children still need your influence, the fact that they still need your correction, the fact that you've already been through this with your children 9 times, and now you're going over the same thing again, you can't be offended at the fact that your children still need your attention in this area. As your children get a little bit older, it's very easy, parents, for you to take your children's attitudes and actions and maybe misbehaviors and their rebellion and their sin. Oftentimes, it's easy for you to take it very personally, as if the reason they're doing it is to get at you. I'm sure no parents ever felt that way. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you treating me this way? You have to understand that whenever you have a structure where there is someone in authority and someone under authority, when the issue is with God, it often is pointed at authority. Moses in the wilderness, right? It was easier to speak against Moses than it was to speak against God. Although they eventually did speak against God, you know, their real frustration is what God told us and where we got is not what we expected. In Moses, it's your fault that we're here. We listened to you. But ultimately, their real problem is with God. And with our children, ultimately, the relationship that we're aiming for is one between them and God. But it's much easier for that rebellion or that sin or that attitude to get directed to you. And when it gets directed to you, it can be offensive to you. So sometimes you can be offended at the attitude or the action of your children. Sometimes you just plain get mad, because you've told them to do this and that. Meanwhile, you're still trying to do this and that, and you're trying to manage this and make sure that they have clean clothes and make sure that there's food on the table, and then you come find out, and not only have they not done that you've told them to over there, they've also messed up that and bloody-nosed the other sibling over there. And you get mad. And when you get mad, you tend to react in a way that is not sharpening the sword. Is there a time for spanking your children? Yep. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. The rod of correction shall drive it far from them. The use of a rod is biblical. However, Proverbs 22:8 says, the rod of his anger shall fail. A rod or any kind of correction given to your children in anger does not sharpen them. The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. When your method of fixing the dull sword is to be mad at it and to have wrath to address the fault, doesn't sharpen the sword. When you are really frustrated, and you will all be there, unless you're like a saint, you will be there. You will be frustrated. And when you are frustrated, you don't do the job very well. This sword just won't sharpen. I'll sharpen you. It's not going to go that way. When we are frustrated and angry, the words we say and the way we say them do not result in sharpening. They hurt. The Bible says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace to the hearer. Like our words, which are supposed to be the words of God with our children, are ministering grace unto them. Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. I understand the context here is that if someone else is blowing up and we want to calm that situation, it's a soft answer. But grievous words stir up anger. And when you get angry at your children and you begin to respond to your children with your anger in grievous words, even if you're right, even if you are 100% correct on the issue, and even if what they did needs correction, it needs attention, it needs sharpening, we're not going to deal, this is not how it's going to be. We're going to work on this and we're going to fix it. But when you use grievous words to fix or address the issue of your children, it doesn't sharpen their sword. It stirs up anger in your children. And every parent has experienced that with your anger and wrath, when you addressed an issue that needed to be addressed, it didn't produce the peaceable fruits of righteousness within your children. And I'm not saying that your children are going to happily agree with everything you've said. But let their unhappiness be because of the sin or the rebellion that's in their heart, not as a response to the harsh words and spirit of a mom and a dad. Ecclesiastes 7:4, be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Now, look, there's not a parent in here that hasn't been really angry, tired, frustrated, worn out. I just don't want to do this anymore. I walked down the mountain house the other morning, and one of the children, younger ones, got the Hershey's chocolate syrup out and had a bowl full with some strawberries that had been cut up, and so they're chocolate-covered strawberries, and the half-eaten strawberries with the chocolate on them are on the table or the floor, and whoever had it didn't notice when they were going back to the kitchen that it was aiming down, and so there's dribbles of syrup, chocolate syrup, all over the floor, on the door, and in the fridge. And all I wanted to do was to come down that morning and get my coffee and my Bible and sit down and have my time with God, and I'm looking at all of this, and I've got many thoughts going through my head. Okay. Number one, who got the chocolate syrup without asking? 2, we have numerous times said, if you cut up a strawberry and cut the end off, you throw it in the trash. Don't leave it all around the house. Thirdly, if you spill it, clean it up. Now, by the way, we've not had this lesson once. We've not had this lesson over the last year. This is like becoming vain repetition in my mind. And so when it came up, now I was feeling frustrated. The reason I was feeling frustrated was because it became inconvenient to what I wanted to do at that moment. Because what I wanted to do was to get my coffee, and I wanted to go sit down and have a nice quiet time with God in the morning, and there's now an issue right in front of me that's going to require me to go find the guilty party and to bring them back over here to start having a discussion about, did you ask to get the chocolate syrup out? Right? Did you drip it on the floor? Don't lie to me. Did you drip it on the floor? Be honest about it. Why didn't you clean it up? And now we're going to have to walk through the process of cleaning it up, whatever discipline may or may not be necessary at that time, and that's going to take away this small window of time that I have for what I wanted to do, and this whole thing of parenting the right way is really inconvenient to my plan and my agenda, because I've got other things that I want to do, and this parenting thing is getting in the way of what I want to do. Amen? Amen. Yeah, right. You know this is true. You know that there are things that you want to do that get interrupted by your parenting. And one of the mind shifts that has to happen is that the primary thing that you do is parenting. That is the objective. That is the long-term objective. And what happened right there was God presenting in front of you an opportunity to whet the sword. So other than being upset, because here's how a lot of parents would deal with that. They'd get mad. And the mad would be, who put this out here on the table? Who dripped the chocolate on the floor? How many times have I told you not to get in the fridge without asking me? How many times have I told you if you drip it to pick up your mess? I am sick and tired of cleaning up after you. Now you get over there and you clean that up, and I better not ever see that again out of you. And that's how Christian parents parent. And by the way, you're getting 3 spankings for that. 5? 5. Nailed it. And what happens to a lot of children, those children don't become sharp swords. They're very dull swords. Your children being fearful to make you mad is not good parenting. Being angry and mad at your kids to get a result out of them will produce some things right away. Like immediately, what you'll get is compliance out of your children. You will get compliance. And they will not leave a strawberry lying around again. Not because they've learned the real lesson. Because there's a lot of lessons involved in that. Okay, lesson number 1. We live in a real small house. And if everybody did what you did to cut the end of the strawberry off and leave it sitting there, what if all 11 of us did that? And what if we did that with each thing? What if none of us ever took care of the mess that we made? What if we all just left stuff here? What do you think our house would be like? Do you think you thought about other people in the house? Like when you cut it and when you left it there, were you thinking about how inconvenient that would be for somebody else? When you dripped it on the floor and saw it and ignored it, who were you thinking about when that went? Were you thinking about your mom who'll have to get down there and scrub it later? Were you just too lazy? Were you like there's a whole lot of lessons to be learned in there about the character of that child. Okay, why do we pick up our strawberry and throw it away? Is it so dad or mom doesn't get mad? Is that why we do it? Right? Is there a reason behind it? What is the reason behind having to ask mom or dad before you get chocolate syrup? Like, why do we do that? Why is that even exist there? There's a couple good reasons for that. Right now, you don't understand what's healthy for you and what's not healthy for you. And God, we're going to teach you that. We're going to help you understand what those things are so you can make good decisions, but you're not ready to make those decisions by yourself. And second of all those things cost money. And so mom and dad, when we buy things, we've got a budget, how we do it and what we use for. And by you going in and taking it selfishly like that, you didn't think about the whole family and what's there. We're in this thing together. So there's actually, but you know what that takes? It takes time to do that. It's much easier to say, who put this strawberry and chocolate on the floor? Now you get in here right now and wipe it up and I don't ever want to see it again. Yeah, see, you got it all taken care of. But you did not create a sharp sword. You did not help the child. All you did is make the child not want to cross you. And that doesn't sharpen a sword. It takes time. Solomon said this in Proverbs 4:3. If I can get there. For I was my father's son, tender and only beloved in the sight of my mother. He taught me also, and said unto me, let thine heart retain my words. Keep my commandments and live. And then you begin to listen to the teaching of a father with a son. It takes time. There's a lot of kids who just think, man, my parents are always just mad at me. What do you think goes into the psychology of a kid who the only thing or the majority of the thing that they experience from the parent is, I frustrate my parents? What do you think goes into the mind of that kid? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Their value of themselves diminishes. I'm reminded of what we looked at Sunday about the Thessalonians, that Paul took such time, 2 chapters worth of time, to express to them their value, how he saw the sincerity of their faith, the sincerity of their love, the effectiveness of them sharing the gospel, the example and the pattern that they were. However, we're going to have to deal with rampant fornication in the church. You know what he said to them? Do you remember? Go look in 1 Thessalonians. Remember what Paul said to them, how he treated them like a father? Where's my... verse number 7, but we were gentle among you, even as a nurse cherisheth her children, so being affectionately desirous of you. Affectionately desirous of you. We were willing to have imparted unto you not the gospel of God only, but our own souls, because you were dear unto us. So he talks about a nurse with a child. So we have a couple of little babies floating around here. I've noticed the spirit of those who like to carry the little babies. Right? What do you do with those little babies? Gentle, tender, compassionate, wanting to give yourself. You know what we actually say to those babies? Let me have the baby now. I want to have a turn. You know what that child hears when it's a little baby? I'm desired and I'm wanted, even though I'm pooping my diapers, even though I'm puking up here, even though I can't do anything for anybody, everybody has to do everything for me, I am affectionately desired. Do you know how important it is for your children to know along the way, as you are whetting the sword, that they've never stopped being affectionately desired by you, that they are still tender and beloved in the sight of their mother and their father? Yeah, we're going to have to deal with this. Okay, this is inappropriate. We're not going to behave this way. You can wrestle with your brother, can't hurt him. We're not damaging other people. We're protecting each other. Right? We're going to work on relationships with each other. We're going to work on attitudes. Have you parents ever noticed that your children can get grumpy when they're tired? Mm-hmm. I personally think it's a mistake to rearrange the world around your kids' nap time. My own opinion. Is it good to have a bedtime? Yes. Good to have a wake-up time? Yes. Good to have a nap time? Yes. Is it good to interrupt their schedule? Yes. Because you know what children learn along that process? I know your body's used to a schedule, but life doesn't revolve around your schedule. In the real world, real things happen, and you're going to be interrupted. And the child's natural response to their schedule being interrupted is what? Oh, Mom, no problem. I know it's now an hour past my normal bedtime, and I am pleased that it is this way, and I'm going to smile and be happy about it. I know breakfast is normally at 7:30, and it's 7:45, and my stomach are in knots, but Mom, take your time with the breakfast. I realize you had an urgent phone call this morning that you had to get to. I'm okay waiting. No, that's not the natural response of a child. The natural response of a child, when you've interrupted my normal pattern of life and things aren't the way, I am going to let you know, Mom, this is unacceptable. And I will watch parents say, sorry, we can't stay. It's my kid's bedtime. You know what? I know it's your bedtime, but we're going to be another hour. It's the way it's going to be. And expect your children to have a bad attitude about it. Like, expect them to have a bad attitude, but don't pander to their bad attitude. Don't excuse it. Like when your kids get that bad attitude and they start being mean to another sibling, and you start tolerating them being mean to the other sibling, and you excuse it by saying, they're really tired. It's just past their bedtime. That's not a good excuse for their behavior. Nor is it a good excuse for your behavior. Because kids who have been pandered to that way often produce adults that when it's past your bedtime, and when you haven't had the sleep you need, and when you haven't got fed, because I know men who turn into bears if they don't get their meal on time, they get mad. And it's like, you better do it on my time, because maybe that's how they got pandered to when they were children. You know, by teaching children, you can be hungry, and it can be uncomfortable, and you can be tired, and you don't have your bed, and I know it doesn't feel good. I know that. It's okay to not feel good. It's just not okay for you to think it's a license to be rude to other people. And your rude behavior is going to be corrected and disciplined. We're not going to do it. You're going to be nice. I don't want to be nice. We're going to wet this. And then maybe it's like, maybe bedtime needs to be a little bit later tomorrow night too. We need to wet this. The idea is that if you are sharpening a sword, you're preparing an arrow, you know the finished product that you want. You're aiming at the words of God. What does God teach in His Word? What does God say about, is that in your heart, by the way, first? Are you allowing that to be sharpened in your own heart, and then you're sharpening it in the child? You're not mad along the way. You're not angry along the way. You might be exhausted along the way. You might be thinking, this is taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. Keep on wetting that, and keep on going to God for grace. You need to go to God with that. You need to say, God, I am absolutely tired. I am absolutely worn out. There is a major issue happening with the kids over there, and I don't want to deal with it right now. I want to just go, ah! God, I need you. I need your Spirit so that when I rebuke and correct this issue, I don't hurt the sword that I'm trying to sharpen. That I don't, in my anger, whack it and create a new dent that's going to take me a lot longer to now go fix the dent that I made when I did that to my children. Because we've all done that. I have. I've had to go back and fix the damage I did. like me. And sometimes it's because I just wanted something. Sometimes I just want it to revolve around me. Like, I don't want to have to do anything. I just want you all to be perfect saints and it all to be the way that I want it. And I just want that. And then when it's not that way, and then that nasty fleshly reaction that comes out damages and hurts the children. So what am I supposed to do? I am to teach my children diligently in sharpening the sword. And I'll tell you what a joy being around families in our church, because that is the spirit amongst the families in this church. It is. It's evident that that's the spirit amongst the families in the church. But be not weary in well-doing. And there are certain times that are harder than other times. And there's reward times. There's reward times. I feel like I'm in kind of a reward time right now as you get a group of older kids that you've had for a lot of years, and they start transitioning to young adult and adult, and you start to find that spirit of unity it's really starting to sink in, and that love and that family power, that family unit, that family, and it's like this is marvelous. For all of you that have got little kids right now, like you have wee little ones, and a lot of them, hang in there. I remember getting a phone call from my wife. I think what we had at home at that time, Marissa was probably 7 or 8. Tabby was 5 or 6. I think we had 8, 6, 4. 8, 6, 5, something like that. And then we had, Micaiah was 2. Hadassah was 8 months. And Michaela was newborn. So newborn, 8 months, 2, 4, 6, and 8. And I worked at the school. I was at the office, the church and school office, and I got a phone call from my wife. And it went something to the effect of, if you want any living children at the end of this day, you will need to come home. I said, I'm on my way. Go get some Calgon and go disappear for a while. It just be. And she said, I'm nursing one baby. I've got a bottle feeding the other baby. And I've got this kid folding laundry, and this kid's unfolding all of the laundry. The dishes are piling up. This can't be done. Someone's breaking this. And I can't move. I've got to feed this baby and bottle feed this baby. And that one's dirty and that one's crying. And sometimes I think as moms, you feel like I'm not doing any training. I'm just going from one catastrophe and one chaos to the next. And it may feel like that. But keep going and keep sharpening. Look at your children. Look diligently at your children. Where does that sword need to be sharpened? You got to know your children. You got to pray, Lord, help me to know how to sharpen this child. Are there things that you notice in your child? And I'll just give one last illustration of it. The Bible says in Hebrews that Jesus was the express image of the Father. The express image. And the word there is character, where we get our word character. And the root of that word is like a carver or an engraver. And if you think about someone who takes a hunk of wood and then carves something out of it, they don't carve the image. They remove everything that is not the image. So they've got the image in their mind, what's there, and then when they're carving, they're taking away everything that's not the image. And the image that we're trying to build in our children is the image of Christ himself. That's the image. We want that image to be in our children. I travail in birth again until Christ be formed in you. So then you look at Christ. Look at him. What are some things that we see in the image of Christ as a human being on earth? We see that he's meek and lowly. Are your children meek and lowly? Probably not. So what do? You carve, you sharpen, you keep working, you keep teaching, you keep at it. Stick with it, parents. And if you're finding yourself like, I'm struggling with how to do it, go talk to someone else who's doing it. Like, ask them a question. Do your kids punch each other? How do you deal with it? And by the way, go to the Bible with how to deal with it. Don't go to humanistic means with how to deal with it. Right? Go to the Bible with how to deal. What about your kids being nasty with each other? You know what you have to have? In my view, what you have to have? Zero tolerance for nasty. Zero tolerance for nasty. When one of your children is nasty to the other child, you got to stop. Stop mixing the cake. Stop mixing that. You're going to be like, hold on, we're going to deal with this now. You two, let's come over here. You're not going to do that. And if it happens again, you correct it and you discipline it, not in anger, but you're like, you don't get to be nasty. But he dropped my... I understand, we can deal with that, but you don't get to be nasty. But I had it first, and then he took it and said, we'll deal with that, but you don't get to be nasty. Like, nothing that the other ones do gives you permission to be nasty, and we're going to deal with your nasty every time. But what's a better way than being nasty? What do you do when this happens? When someone does take what was yours and they didn't ask your permission, and they should have asked your permission, and they did it, and then they wouldn't give it back, what's another way to do this without being nasty? Is there another way? Let's talk about that way. What does the Bible say? Okay, let's work on that. So next time they do it and they're nasty, and you go back and say, okay, remember last time we said you can't be nasty. There's got to be a better way. Okay, explain to me what happened again. Okay, so you got nasty. What could you have done other than be nasty? Well, I could have. That's exactly right. High five it. Okay, it's probably going to happen again. I'm going to deal with that, but next time it happens, let's pray that you can do it without being nasty. How are you going to do it again next time if it happens? Right, you're going to do that. Great. I know you can do it. Right, I'll be watching. I bet you can do it. Instead of you going, just getting mad and frustrated, you got to whet that sword. You got to believe in your children as well. You see, when you're just angry and frustrated, it makes them think they can never change. You got to believe in them. You got to get behind them. You're their coach. You're their mentor. Negative coaches don't ever produce great teams. Coaches have to believe in you. Coaches have to make you see about you what you don't see about yourself. They've got to tell you that you can do it, and when you mess up, okay, that's fine, we got to do it. You got it next time. I know you can do it. You're coaching, you're mentoring, you're encouraging, you're lifting them up. You're not threatening them. Right? You're not using a threat to control them. You're not saying, if I ever see you do that again, boy, I tell you what, I'm going to beat you within 2 inches of your life. That's not sharpening a sword. That's just making them scared. So all of you older teenagers and young adults in here, by virtue of our church, we're an extended family. We're an extended family, right? There's a lot of mentoring opportunities in here. A lot of great mentoring opportunities. Some of you older teens and young adults, by God's grace, by some parents who really invested in you or some other things, you've actually got really good character, and you've got good behavior, and you've got some good patterns that are set up in you. And when we're together, this isn't a teen camp. It's a family camp. And so we got wee little ones, we got middle ones, we got older ones. And I'll tell you what, for some of you single young adults that aren't into this yet, there's some great opportunities for you to learn how to be part of the mentoring process. Because guess what you're going to find when you're around these younger kids? Guess what you're going to notice about them? Right? You're going to notice some of the flaws. And it's not because they have parents who are bad parents and aren't working on it. It's just that this process is continuing over time. And sometimes kids do really well when they're right in the eye shot of mom and dad. And sometimes when they're not near mom and dad, right, some of that deeper flaw inside that they've learned to master outside but not inside, it shows up around. And you know what some of you older kids get the opportunity to do? Mentor. You get to come alongside and help sharpen the sword. Because guess what? In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. So what if mom and dad have been working with a particular child in their home that tends to be very nasty to other people when they don't get their way? Mom and dad are working on it. And now we're at a family camp, or we're at church, or we're somewhere, and you're out there playing a game, and you actually see child so-and-so being real nasty because something didn't go their way. You know what you can do? You can come like an older brother or an older sister. And you come alongside and say, hey, come here for a minute. You know, that was pretty nasty, the way you talked to that person. You don't have to be nasty. There's probably a nicer way to say it. And maybe perhaps your interaction with that child right there validates what their mom and dad have been telling them. Because now, man, it's like mom and dad said it, and here I am out there. My nasty behavior came out. It showed up in front of anybody, and it's not appropriate. And you've come alongside as another voice within that child. And then if they just won't respond to that and their attitude gets pretty bad, say, hey, you know what? I think we better go talk to your mom and dad about it. And then you say, hey, come on, I'll take you to your mom and dad. And then you pass it off to mom and dad. And in doing that, we're teamworking together with all of our families and all of our children. Because I appreciate it when someone in the right spirit. But have you ever noticed in a family, if you have older, this is for those who have more than one, but I think those of you that only have one, you probably had a few in your family or you've experienced it. The older kids tend to get irritated by the younger kids. You ever notice that? The younger kid always wants to go with the older kid, right? And the older kid feels irritated by having the younger kid around. And so sometimes the older kids will always try to shoo the younger kids away. Can I go with you? No. Please? Can I ride on the four-wheeler with you? No. Like what? Well, it's because you're being so selfish and you don't want to deal with someone that's maybe a little bit more immature with you, but you're missing mentoring opportunities. When you say, hey, sure, come along with me, you know what? They are going to slow you down on the hike. Right? They are going to slow you down. Yep. You are going to have to, you want to play catch with someone who really knows, and with you, I'm going to have to like let you catch it and throw it back, and it's going to be time and income. But mentoring. Like you older siblings, what a great opportunity you have to bring that young one along. You say, but I don't like their spirit. I don't like their attitude. Good. Bring them along and demonstrate to them a right spirit and a right attitude and mentor it and put up with a little bit. Like our children should never be an inconvenience to us, and their failures should not be an offense to us. It's just another opportunity for mentoring and embracing. And unfortunately, our society is not very good at that. We're pretty selfish. We don't like to be interrupted. You know, we don't like our schedule messed with. We don't like our bubble messed with. We don't like our thing. You're an irritation. Get away from me. Go do something else. Play a video game. Get on a phone. Go entertain yourself. Just stop making too much noise. Make sure I've got my quiet time. Make sure that I have my space. And parents, if you die to that and you say, the joy and honor and privilege of my life is mentoring kids, and one day, that phase is going to be done. You're going to be on to a different phase, an exciting phase, watching them. Right, Brother Savi? I know your kids. I grew up around them. Whew. Something. But you look at those kids now, serving God, married with families, grandpa phase. Man, what an exciting phase to watch them do it. So I encourage you, parents, don't be weary in well-doing. Don't be weary. Just keep whetting that sword. Whetting that sword. And when you're tired, cry out to God. Lord, I really don't want to sharpen this sword today. God, can I have a day off? No. Kids, don't take a day off from needing a mom and dad. You're going to find, though, as they get older, it's less of that moment by moment. But I promise you this. Enjoy the little kid problems. Enjoy when the problem was they punched each other. Enjoy the problem when it was they dropped chocolate syrup on the floor and didn't throw their strawberry away. Because when they get around 13, 14, 15, 16, you can't just make them wipe up the chocolate. The issues become life. The issues become spirit. The issues become directional change for their entire life. It's not going to be as much physical work, but it's going to take a lot of heart and emotion and time and care. All right, that's it. Anybody want to comment? Question. Let's have a little bit of discussion. Why don't you take the mic around? And maybe you just want to testify, or you want to encourage, you want a question, you want a suggestion,